cyber attacks more repetitive and perhaps more harmful. Technologies are shaping technologies. Cyber attacks are still relying on human vulnerability. But it's not about technologies alone. It's about how humans address them, how they use them.
Joining us today is Maya Sherman, Innovation Attaché at the Embassy of Israel in India, where she drives tech collaborations between Israeli and Indian startups. An AI researcher and ethicist, she represents Israel at the Global Partnership on AI, leading AI literacy efforts for India's informal sector, especially farmers. A graduate of the Oxford Internet Institute, her work on AI policy has been published by Routledge and Oxford University Press, and she also serves on the board of the Israeli Association for Ethics in AI. Uh, Please welcome my sister from another mother, as I like to call her, Maya Sherman. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you, Maya. We talk about cybersecurity like it's a tech problem, but you have worked with farmers in Maharashtra, Fortune 500 boardrooms, and government agencies across 4 continents. Is it actually a human problem of wearing a tech costume?
So when we're understanding technologies, we need to see that we have a technology on one side, but it's not about technologies alone. It's about how humans address them, how they use them. And as you just said, we are now facing such interesting times where governments, the global Fortune 500, and also informal sector, they need to understand how technology is part of their life. So it's never in silos. If in the past we used to think of technology alone, meaning it's a developer's problem, now technology has become relevant for farming purposes. It's all of a sudden relevant for digital transformation of the government. Global Fortune 500, they need to go through massive AI processes. So in many ways, we all of a sudden discuss not just about how technologies are shaping technologies. We are discussing about how technologies are shaping social processes, and more interestingly, how society is shaping and also designing the way that we're consuming technology. So it's a very interesting human process that has a lot of technological elements, but they're going side by side. It's never separated.
In your experience, what's the single biggest misconception people, whether a CEO or a first time smartphone user, have about how vulnerable they actually are?
I think that the biggest misconception is that if you're very technical or very tech savvy, then you're immune. People don't understand the way that vulnerabilities work today. They're very, very sophisticated and it's very accessible. So, in many ways, you can be a technophobic person, someone who has not done technologies. You can be a very strong tech savvy person, and you might fall very easily into a phishing attack.
Okay.
The thing is, all of our data is much more accessible today. So, it's no longer the question of technological understanding. It's much more about where our data assets are distributed in many ways. So I feel that if up until now, we thought that most of the attacks will go for the older generation, the people who don't know tech. Today, also seeing very strong technological people falling into this cyber attacks or generally becoming much more vulnerable online. And the reasons are varied. It's first of all because our data is everywhere. Today, actually, the more we're using AI, the more exposed we are because AI is not as safe the way that previous platforms are. We're seeing much more open source usage. So if up until now being a tech person would have been an advantage in this cyberspace, today everyone is vulnerable. So I think this is a big misconception. And I think that's something big that people are still not understanding. So the evolution of attacks and vulnerabilities is also changing. And from the other side, the identity of the attacker is not the same. Up until now, we always thought that the attacker would be this kind of script kiddies, the ones who were growing into computers, understood how cyber attacks are. Today, everyone who has accessibility to prompts and Gen AI models can become quite a painful hacker. So it's almost this mainstreaming of how hackers are supposed to look today, because everyone can create this kind of prompts and inputs. And that's an interesting evolution. So both from the victim side, I think that much more populations can be attacked today. It's not only the question of how tech savvy you are, but in the same time, attackers as well, you no longer need to be a very strong developer, coder to be able to attack someone. You need accessibility in many ways to the right data sets, to the right inputs. And that's interesting because it means that both the attackers and the victims are all over. And it's no longer a question of how tech savvy the hacker is and how not as strong technological person the victim is. It can be all together. And that's something I feel is new to us also in terms of the understanding of how we can defend better the victims. How can we perhaps support victims from understanding who their potential hacker would be in the next few months, years, and going forward?
Definitely, absolutely correct. AI is now being used to launch attacks and defend against them simultaneously. From what you have seen on the ground, who's winning that arms race right now? The attackers or the defenders?
It's a very interesting question because I think that the roles of the attackers versus the defenders is becoming a bit blurry. And again, especially when we're thinking on the misconceptions. So previously, I could easily tell you that the attackers would be the very strong, tech savvy folks. The victims would be of a very certain type. Today, it's a bit all in between. I do feel, and that's my perception, that cyber attacks have always been sophisticated. Today, we are seeing a new generations of hackers, or generally people who are able to do this kind of cyber attack, that are not necessarily such strong developers, coders who are coming from technological background. Meaning the identity of the ones who are doing the attacks is becoming slightly less technologically sophisticated. Means if we're thinking of this balance, it's like the attackers are becoming less strong compared to the defense. But in many ways, we have so many new technological vectors, meaning our vectors of attack today are endless. And think, for instance, of phishing attacks. If in the past, we used to judge the phishing attacks based on quality. Now, if it was based on quality, we needed someone to be able to write the perfect email, the perfect content. But think today, you no longer need a language to be able to write these prompts. Today, you need, again, Gen AI models. You need a very easy prompt to the level of ChatGPT. You can write this content perfectly. We still don't have so many safeguards to prevent it actually using the ChatGPT. And then everyone can become a hacker. So it's an interesting question because I think that the answer is something that we're still exploring. I do feel that AI driven cyber attacks is something that is dual because, on the one hand, we're able to create more attacks using AI. Everyone can create them. Language is no longer an issue. But in the same time, we can build this kind of data sets for defense, meaning we are seeing all these AI attacks happening. It's not really new, it's not something novel. We can train our data sets for defense according to that. And there are a lot of AI security startups out there. So I do feel that today perhaps defense has a greater advantage because the AI driven cyber attacks are becoming a bit repetitive. But in the same time, more people are vulnerable today. And also, a lot of people that aren't necessarily, I would say, tech savvy do not really understand that they are also vulnerable, which I think is, again, it's a big misconception that just make cyber attacks more repetitive and perhaps more harmful. So it's not just that you need a very sophisticated cyber attack to make someone suffer or to go through a very strong repercussion. Sometimes it's the most painful phishing email that you never thought it would cause you harm that will be very harmful to you in the end because it's the wrong click. It's just not paying enough attention. And today, everyone can create this kind of harmful cyber attacks. And that's, I feel, the problem. And the balance currently is perhaps, yes, we can use it properly for defense. But in the same time, I would say that this expansion of hackers, the fact that everyone can do this cyber attacks using AI, I think it's quite alarming. And it puts this balance into question. So even if defense technologies are good today, it's a question of frequency. Frequency wise, we are in a problem. Many more people, malign actors, can become hackers only if they want to.
Do you want to say that the generation of script kiddies, which existed when, I'll say in your and mine younger times, with the use of AI, they have become sophisticated threat actors, and now due to the widespread information and knowledge available today, today, like blockchain, cryptocurrency, that has become itself uh, what should I say, is a different aspect of career for them. A lot of them are trying to choose this. Definitely, this is illegal, but they are choosing this path also.
So, when I started in cybersecurity, I remember that we had this classification. I know also like from the illustration, you had the white hackers, black hackers,
Yeah.
and gray hackers.
Yeah.
We knew the script kiddies. And
Yes.
in many movies, it was also kind of like a bad
And
nickname, right?
and in our times, I'll still call it 2009, 10. When blockchain came, cryptocurrency came, and script kiddie was not a very respectful term. But now, all these script kiddies using AI, and definitely using the AI models, like Warm GPT and Avil GPT and all the other readily widely available. You just need few clicks, and you need to be a curious mind finding all these things. It becomes very, very easy even to write a malware code to, and having the access to all the cryptocurrencies. Now I think that itself is a different ball game. And also, what are your views about it? I'm seeing this trend coming even in India now. A lot of younger generation, even the who are learning in school or in the organization, seeing that yes, this is one of the domain they are choosing without knowing the replications.
Sure, I think if in the past I feel that the term script kiddie became a bit of a bad terminology or had some kind of a bias against it, was because it was a kind of an exclusive club. When you think a lot of the hackers, think how usually movies portray hackers. So generally on the industry, it's like this very strong coders that are able to do everything, and the regular user would not be able to understand that.
Exactly.
What's happening next
Exactly.
is phenomenal. I don't need to learn code to be able to become script kiddie anymore. So all of a sudden, many new people are able to join this kind of exclusive club. I think that it's not just a career, it's also perhaps this feeling of satisfaction of users that were alienated before from the tech.
I'm saying an illegal career. This is not a career they can portray outside. This is illegally they are doing, and without understanding the legal repercussions of it.
True.
Yeah.
I think it's true currently for every user. Most users today do not even understand that what they're doing might be considered to be, black hacking or gray hacking, because there is a lot of gray in this. And the problem is that, if in the past we had an understanding, we knew what phishing is supposed to be.
Yes.
Now the data is out there. Sometimes, users are creating certain prompts and they're not even aware of how our users might react to it. So this expansion is problematic because all of a sudden, if we knew before that, again, trying to hack a certain website platform is wrong, today there are so many new interfaces, and also users are not really aware that what they're doing is wrong because it's them versus ChatGPT, it's them versus Gen AI. So when you're in the platform and no one is even looking at you, then it's much harder to know if what I'm doing is wrong or not. Because in social media, it's different. If, social engineering, posting things online, you're trying to be anonymous as well. Deep darknet, deep web, it was all kind of segregated, I feel, hubs where you kind of knew what's wrong and what's not. ChatGPT has this kind of feeling that you're anonymous because you are just talking to an algorithm and no one is supposed to look. Now, it's not the case. Actually, it's still kind of supervised by OpenAI and all these companies. And I think that's a tricky part. Even if people are doing something illegal, they're not aware it's illegal. And let's be frank, there are not really proper safeguards coming and telling what you're currently doing with using Gen AI is wrong. In cybersecurity, we have a better understanding because it's an old tradition, it's an old practice. We know how hacking is supposed to look like. But now, if someone is actually writing a prompt using ChatGPT, you need now to tell me if I want to hack a bank, what phishing email I can do. Now, It's an intention. No one said the person will actually do this. Does this mean that OpenAI now is supposed to come and say to the bank, oh, you have this user, he wants to do a prompt, arrest them? It's a tricky time. So I think it's fascinating because we all of a sudden have the option to be the bad guys. But in the same time, I don't want to censor everyone from writing whatever they want to do. We cannot really know if someone who wrote something in ChatGPT will actually commit something. But in the traditional hacking, usually, you had this kind of problematic spaces. If you wanted to hack or, to try and get some stolen password, you would go to the darknet. I mean, as someone who was a white hacker, I had to go to darknet spaces. I had to look for the ones who were doing the bad thing and try to stop them. ChatGPT, it's a whole different story because it's something much more personal and it's not really anonymous, which makes I think this entire process of hacking and users using data into much more ambiguous and much harder to stop because we don't really know where to put this red line compared to other spaces.
A lot of threat actors or even the script kiddies who understand the importance of anonymity, what I found out through our research at Mitigata also is they are using models like warm gpt, Avel gpt, and they are paying in cryptocurrency, so they are trying to maintain their anonymity. So that is also one of the curious case. So even what are your views about it?
I think that's the interesting part that anonymity.
And adding on to that, sorry to. So when we were, going back to our younger times, when we wanted to, so everybody's a curious mind. You, I, anybody who we can call ourselves hackers, definitely white hats. But at the end of the day, yes. So, but we were curious enough to learn a lot of things. Okay, what can, that is when you learn the, definitely the only thing that differentiates us from black hat is our intentions. Definitely nothing else. It's just the intentions. I can do the same thing. You can do the same thing. The black hat hacker is doing the same thing. It's just the intentions behind what we are trying to achieve out of this. So in this current scenario, when they are maintaining the anonymity by using those models, paying through cryptocurrencies and maintaining their anonymity, and now that that entire ecosystem is worth trillions now. So I think bigger players are also involved in this.
True. I think that, the good thing, we're advancing,
Yes.
meaning anonymity tools today are much more sophisticated than before. I would say that I don't feel that we're seeing this kind of sophistication necessarily in cyber attacks. Cyber attacks are still relying on human vulnerabilities.
Yes.
In the end, it's writing the right phishing email that will make you click. You'll have to pay. You try to go for the places where the passwords are stolen. I think that what we are seeing, and it's become so interesting in this space, is that we now have a new platform using, again, Gen AI models, which is not necessarily so technologically sophisticated, but it makes everyone a more technological person, even if it's not their orientation. So potentially, frequency wise, we can see much more attacks and people using, different models, as you just said. I think that the frequency is becoming an issue because if up until now we had this threshold, meaning I needed to, as we, growing up in this domain, we needed to be more darknet savvy. We needed to know a bit more how encryption works to learn more on cybersecurity. Now we don't need to learn anymore. Anyone in the street who has just accessibility to the internet, understanding a bit the models, can have all the manuals that they want to be able to enter this domain. Now that's tricky because while we do have certain measures to see how we can tackle these anonymous platforms, Gen AI models are not still properly regulated. It's because the industry is trying to promote them. So while I can very clearly say, we know the darknet is bad, some will come and say, not really. It's good for other purposes. But let's put models. So I think it's a good platform because it enables to play with data. But it's easier for government to come and say darknet can be a bad place. Let's try and see how to regulate it.
Yes.
Can you regulate Gen AI? Most countries don't dare to do this because we're also using AI to promote industry. And that's a tricky part. We have a technology that help us accelerate the frequency, the scope, the volume of cyber attacks. we don't really try to stop it so much. And the problem is, users don't really understand what are the limitations because they're not coming from technological background. So someone like you, that grew in the cyberspace, if you will now use AI for any cyber investigation, you know what are the rules, you know what's legal and what's not legal. Someone who just entered and is experimenting, someone need to teach them, listen, it's true that you have access, but that's not how it used to be. There are some frameworks, there are some ethical guidelines. Even if you can write a prompt now to write a certain phishing attack, you should not do this. And I think that's the interesting part that, both of us grew in this domain, so we know what's right and what's wrong, and we did not have Gen AI growing up in this. Now, people who were not from cybersecurity, they need to learn the new limitations, but no one is really limiting Gen AI. I think that's where I see this industry is going into a very gray and interesting evolution.
Definitely. And you brought out dark web. So, dark web can also be used uh, in the right direction also. For example, when we are carrying out red teaming exercises for the organization who want us to, then in that case, we take their consent first thing. Definitely very, very important. Post that, we use whatever we can get from dark web. And recently, one of the organization, we were able to infiltrate, definitely dump the data and definitely prove it that, these are the ways that your organization can be infiltrated. As you brought out, very important to stick to the basics. Enable MFA, rotate the credentials after a particular duration. The data which we found out was old, but we were still able to use the same, data. Uh, MFA was not enabled even for the admin accounts and things like that. Yes. So as you said, they still have to exploit the human factor into it.
I think it's any chats about darknet always bring a lot of philosophical question of how free we want our data to be. There are certain things we don't want to happen, but there are a lot of things that we want. There are a lot of journalistic investigation that came up out of the darknet. So
Yes,
there are beautiful things about it as well, because if we want to really democratize data, deep web and darknet are big parts of it. But I do feel that like these are places that someone like you and your company, I mean, cybersecurity experts, you know how to navigate it. I feel that the problem now is the fact that there are users who can all of a sudden access it very fast, and they did not go through the same training or understand that it's not so obvious that today using different AI capabilities, they can become quite fast cyber expert. And again, they might use it for good, they might use it for bad, but there is a certain training process that I feel is a bit missing when we're using the Gen AI models, because you can do whatever you want. No one is stopping you, because it's a dual use technology and you can use it for different purposes. So I think that's perhaps the trickier part of how we are still able to restrain users from doing whatever they want. And what I would say is currently a pretty free platform for usage.
definitely. You led an AI literacy program that reached over 20,000 farmers in rural Maharashtra. Well, congratulations for the same.
Thank you.
What cyber threats are people at the level of the economy actually facing, and are they even aware of them?
So that, the answer would be exactly the combination. I feel that the more data exposed you are, the more vulnerable you will be. So, if in the past farmers did not need to use technology, then they would actually be quite immune. And that's, I think, the funny part. That actually, the more technological we are becoming, we are literally exposing ourselves to threats. Like, I guess, going to the sun and getting sunburn in a way. It would have been better to stay home and not getting exposed to sun, but we want to be outside. It's the same with technology, if you're asking me. So the informal sector, especially, because again, they are using technologies and they actually want to datify some of the agricultural processes, then they are putting themselves under certain risk. There is something that I know one of my biggest mentors always taught me, and I do follow it, that the risk will always be there. The question is, first of all, the motivation, probability. These are the two considerations that we always need to take into consideration. When it comes to farmers, again, they are not really aware. In some cases, they are not aware of what the repercussions would be because they are not necessarily the first users of technology, and that's okay. Um, the thing is to be able to teach them what exactly tech adoption is supposed to look like and what are the threats in front of them. They also need to understand, first of all, how this technology is relevant for them, and also the question of motivation. Why necessarily would a hacker try to perhaps do certain harm to crop monitoring? Or, I mean, it might be for competition purposes. It's 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 feasible, but it's always a question of probability. So I don't think that it's something that should prevent the informal sector from entering the space. It's always about awareness. um Formal and informal economies should be aware of the threats in front of them. Might be out of competitors, might be out sometimes security risk, geopolitics, everything is there. So I think that again, there are risks, but it's also the question of ability and motivation of hackers to try and attack a certain user.
Great, great. Uh, on the other end of the spectrum, you have advised multinational corporations, government agencies. Is a Fortune 500 company meaningfully safer than a small NGO, or is scale just a different kind of vulnerability?
I think that everyone is vulnerable. But in many ways, it's the question of how many defenses you're putting. It's like, going to a doctor. Um, if I had several vaccines in the past, I might be more protected than someone who never took a vaccine because I made sure to have additional protection shields so that the virus won't come. Sometimes there is a mutation, new mutation that we didn't see before. And this mutation will attack both the CEO and the average user who has an NGO or an MSME. And that's, I think, exactly the case here. So, ideally, on theory, yes, the usually the big fortune company who has CTOs, who has a full security stack, is supposed to be more protected because they have the investments to put in there. In the same time, whenever there are new attacks, whenever we have sophisticated hackers who are trying to attack a specific big tech company that has more sensitive data sets, and we've seen this over the years. So the frequency of attacks might be even bigger for the big Fortune 500. So they need to be more protected compared to an NGO that the probability of someone trying to attack them specifically is not necessarily so high. So everyone is vulnerable. But as the same as I said in the question before, it's a question of probability and motivation. Who exactly would like to target this specific big Fortune 500? How much they have invested in reverse to do the right security processes, uh, the right shields in a way to make sure that a hacker won't be able to attack them so fastly. But in many ways, there are also a lot of large scale attacks that are trying to target NGOs and organizations that are not so security aware. Uh, and then the attacks are almost random. They are based on weaknesses in passwords or just leakages of data sets. And that's exactly the places that smaller actors are becoming more vulnerable because they are not the ones who are investing enough in protection. So it's a question again, frequency versus motivation. Frequency wise, smaller actors might be a bigger I mean, a bigger threat. When it comes to motivation, then usually the big Fortune 500 might be a more strategic target for hackers to attack.
Yes, and as per our internal research, currently, let's say we are monitoring somewhere between 400 to 500 ransomware sites, over multi-thousand relays, and multiple forums, and definitely other medias also. So this has also increased multifold recently, last 2 years. Those were in just some 200, 250 ransomware groups were there, and now that has climbed up. So the scale at which they are attacking is too high, and for them everybody is a target today, because using AI and the way they have became very, very professional. If you go to multiple forums, um, naming few without naming many, if you can go to Dread, if you go to Pitch, and a lot of Our viewers will not understand what that is. Let's consider pitch as the Twitter of dark web. You can go see their hacker chatter. There is an entire ecosystem which exists. Even the uh, HR exists in a ransomware group. So they are very, very sophisticated. They are very, very professional. We have seen the kind of, if you have, we are able to infiltrate few groups, and we found out their entire ecosystem exists, and they are technically so sound. They follow cyber kill chain, they follow MITRE attack framework. We may not, but they do follow this. And yeah, the scale is too high. You can see initial access being sold every other day in multifold the number of companies. So yeah, for them, even the bigger organization or small organization, they want to achieve their target anyhow. Your views on it?
Yeah, I think that everyone is a target today. We are seeing data sophistication in certain platforms, and it's good, meaning the space is evolving. We don't want to stay backwards. As humanity as well, humans are changing, we're evolving. We also want our technologies to evolve. The thing is, we cannot control to what pace or direction technologies are going into. Darknet is an old and fascinating space that I think has become known to certain communities. Over the years, all of a sudden, we saw Telegram, we saw additional spaces coming into the space. Um, but the thing is, not every company or any entity has enough time to go and do this proper investigations and checkups over this darknet forms. And especially today, when your data is all over, you need to make sure that you're immune. In the same way that you're going to the doctor and asking for a vaccine,
Yes.
you need to make sure that you are data immune. That if there is a certain attack, a certain potential of vector that can be harmful for you, you want to make sure that your assets are safe. And today, it's much easier to attack an entity because much more potential for attackers. It's becoming more accessible. Um, so I think that awareness to this and the understanding of what companies can protect is also becoming very valuable.
Very important. And today, I always tell everyone, all the CISOs especially, there is no harm on going over dark web, but learn the basics first. Learn the OPSEC is very, very important. You don't end up making a mistake that you yourself are a target when you're, surfing the dark web. So learn the basics of OPSEC first, then go there, and you should know what you are expecting from an organization whom you have outsourced your, services for dark web or other such requirements. Yeah. So going to the next query of mine, critical infrastructure like power grids, hospitals, water systems is increasingly connected and increasingly at risk. How prepared are institutions in developing economies to defend systems that entire populations depend on?
I think this question will vary very much between countries. Critical infrastructures, from I would say the core of their name,
Mhm.
critical for the nation, meaning they're becoming a target. So traditionally, yes, hackers of any country would always try to go for this infrastructures first. The question become much more complicated as we are thinking on the possible data points of this critical infrastructure with citizens. So usually any hacker will try to look, okay, what are my weak points that I can go infiltrate over there? Usually it's not necessarily in the infrastructure themselves because they're governments, meaning they have enough protection. Usually a lot of the attacks will happen in this small nodes, meaning the users that have this kind of data points with the critical infrastructure, and then the attack can actually happen. I think that today, and if you're looking at emerging economies, um, you have a twofold problem because in some cases the critical infrastructures are not fully protected. I mean, I would put India aside because I think India is an example, of an emerging economy that actually has a very strong tech stack, very strong cybersecurity capabilities. So I think that the problem is usually coming from additional countries in the global south. But usually, when you have a country that has so many different problems and needs, and you need to work on the economy, you don't always have enough investments and power to protect the infrastructural assets. Now, if there is any attack on an electrical grid, if there is any attack on banks, on anything that can be harmful for citizens, This can be equivalent to a war declaration in a way. Now, we've seen different attacks targeting, in Israel actually, and we are a very strong tech company, cybersecurity. We had a very painful cyber attack on one of our insurance companies that was not properly protected. Now, it was almost absurd because, again, for us, cybersecurity is key. We have so many cybersecurity companies. We have such a strong awareness for this. But in the end, it can be a mistake sometimes of one CTO that we need to be much more mindful. Now, think of it when you're taking a country that is not so tech aware. Mistakes can happen all the time. So we need to be all the time prepared and to make sure that, first of all, we have the right government protection for all the critical infrastructure, but also to make sure that if there are any data points with users, so we're able to protect them as well. So it's not just looking at the infrastructure and their protection alone, it's understanding what are the potential avenues where users can also interact with the data layers and make sure that we're protecting them as well, because that's are actually the most sensitive parts I feel of any attacks currently on critical infrastructure today.
Yes, and you brought out about the this incident of a cyber attack on an insurance company. That reminds me that insurance plays a very important role today. The number of attacks happening, the frequency, the script kid is becoming sophisticated threat actors today. I think definitely insurance is a very very important aspect today for a CISO per se, definitely, and for the board. As I always tell people, governance and compliance to identify the risk, security to mitigate the risk, and I think nobody accepts the risk these days, so you have to transfer it through insurance. And how good role you think insurance plays today in the this age of cybersecurity for the board, for CXOs?
One of the disciplines that came out, especially after we saw some cyber attacks in insurance, but
Mm.
more interestingly, the area of risk assessments and using AI in these purposes. One of our strongest domain has become AI-driven insurance and cyber insurance, meaning how do we protect our data in an age that attacks all over. Um, we have very strong companies doing this. I feel that actually one of the biggest assets of emerging technologies today is the fact that we can learn from previous attacks and create these patterns, trends. Insurance is about risk assessment and mitigation. To be able to properly assess your risks, you also need to learn how vulnerable you are. Data wise, you need to understand what are the odds, what is the potential probability that any hacker, any attack might happen. So I feel that this merge of AI and insurance has created such a fascinating domain. We have different companies, in the country dealing with this quite a bit, and because I feel it's a very intuitive intersection. Um, Insurance, in many ways, relied on a lot of data and insights previously taken to be able to come and say what is the probability of a certain action to happen, what is the probability of a risk. AI and a lot of other technologies are exactly meant for it because based on previous data, we can give the right recommendations for insurance. The problem will come whenever we want to think of something new. The same way that I spoke about the mutation.
Yes.
We don't know what the data mutations are. We don't know about the new thing that will come in our world unless they happen before. That's the limitations of AI. So it's perhaps also the reason why AI can never work alone. A human mind can think of a probability or a risk that did not occur beforehand. AI can't, but AI can work at scale. If I can combine the two, if I can have the creativity of a human mind coming and saying, this thing never happened before, but maybe now it will happen. And adding to this the possibility of certain AI risks of attacks that happened in the past, then we're becoming much stronger in our way to provide risk assessment and generally to ensure that someone is immune from certain attacks in a probability of X.
Uh, Social engineering and phishing still account for the majority of successful breaches. With AI now able to generate hyper personalized attacks at scale, is human layer of defense essentially broken? because now we those anybody can write those sophisticated emails. Nowhere you have to see whether there is a grammatical mistake or not. Even if I don't know English, I'll able to generate one.
But I must say, for me, there is, as someone who grew up in the discipline, I guess your degree, there is nothing that I liked more, than the traditional, the Nigerian email. And, the one that always saw that, they were broken from the core.
I
They
think
would,
all of us right now in the room have received that Nigerian email.
and it's
Nigerian
fabulous.
and this success, they don't
Beauty.
they don't have to get successful more than 0.1%.
And
0.1%
it
is
is one user
one user.
fall and did not notice it. Now I'm almost sad. The emails are too perfect. It was so nice to see this kind of cracks, someone who is writing something completely out of the place. But
And it is still running at least more than a decade's time. It's still running. The Nigerian prince, maybe even I'm also receiving. I received one today morning also.
but you know what? I think that it just shows that sometimes it really doesn't matter how the email is written or if there is mistakes or not. It's the question is how well you know your target.
Yeah.
If you know your target and you know, for instance, that this target is going to eat at a certain hour, or that this target is becoming very tired towards the hour, I would say evening time, and you will send the email then, he might fall in, doesn't matter how good he knows English. I think that the thing is, we need to learn our targets a bit more. Social engineering, and what I found to be amazing about it, is that social engineering is really not about tech. It's about exploiting human loopholes. We are tired at times, we are exhausted, we can be angry, we can be hungry as well. If we know how to target our victim in the perfect time, they'll fall, and it doesn't matter how tech savvy they are. And that, I think, is something that we've learned over the years. Now, I almost want to tell you that it's a tricky problem for hackers because all the phishing attacks would look the same. Think of it. If we don't have such a creative hacker and we have quite a sophisticated victim, the generic email will be based on an average attack. A successful attack would be the one who is more creative and actually do not resemble what the others are doing. So I think that social engineering is, again, it's a traditional human exploitation of weaknesses. It still requires us to learn a lot about our victim unless we want to do something very generic. Now we have a much higher frequency because everyone can launch social engineering attacks. So we just need to be aware of, first of all, much more wary of any email that we're getting currently. I remember for myself that and I would consider myself, quite tech savvy, coming from cybersecurity. I had to change something in my payments, and I remember that I got an email right after. I don't know how even that I need to rechange my credit card, and I remember that I'm seeing, and I'm like, this is perfect. I almost clicked it. And that's exactly the thing. Once you're able to really track your target, once you know their patterns, what they are capable of, what their biases are, then it doesn't matter how much this target is strong in tech, understands cybersecurity, everyone can fall. And that's the beauty of social engineering. It's the art of understanding the human mind, what they're good at, what they're weak at. In the end, again, I was able to trace it because, again, I'm coming from this discipline, but everyone is a target and everyone needs to be very careful online, whatever medium it is. Every possible data vector can be a threat at some point or another. AI is an accelerator of it, but I sometimes do miss this very weird email that we used to get in the past that were not so perfectly written, and now they almost look too similar.
Yes. I think there is something called as executive monitoring, which most of the companies must onboard now for their CXOs, at least for their CXOs and all the users in their company, all the employees in their company who are at least handling the admin accounts, whatever that may be, for a firewall or any other product they are doing. So that what a threat actor might be doing, the companies can do and can safeguard them from that kind of attack. Uh, Adding to what you brought out just now. Uh, so you worked across Asia, Africa, Europe, and America. Uh, is there a type of organization or specific sector that is dangerously underestimating its cyber exposure right now?
And it's something that, I think about it a lot because I also feel that our victims are changing. Um, you know, Scamming attacks usually targeted the very older generations. Um, Informal sector, no one would even touch because they were not so much part of the tech ecosystem. So you had kind of traditional sectors that would be prone for these attacks. Now what's happening, I don't think it's again, the older generations again would always be because again, they have this kind of tech and understanding, knowledge, connectivity, but scammers will try to go for them. I actually feel that today, informal sector or newer users of technology, they are at a bigger risk because they're also excited about becoming more data driven, data experts.
Mhm.
They don't understand how exactly their data is used and spread. So if again the younger generation is born into tech, so they're perhaps slightly more wary, but I feel that newer sectors that are becoming more data driven or getting more data exposure, perhaps like informal sector that all of a sudden they have access to chatbots, I feel that they're at risk, or perhaps it's greater risk than before because all of a sudden they're now okay. Now we can also use Gen AI. It's amazing. What do we do with this? I feel that there are also a lot of sectors that are becoming more datafied. Government agencies were always at risk, but now there are more options to attack. So I think, and also we are also trying to datify more government data sets, and we are trying to expose the government more to digital transformation. That means that again, we have a very interesting, sensitive data that can be hacked. So of course, hackers will try to go for it. Um, but yeah, I think that there are much more data factors today. Newer communities that were not so technologically exposed before don't really know what to do with this. So they are becoming a target group. And again, sensitive data sets can be more exposed because of AI usage. So all of a sudden, I feel that, governments are also, they are facing this kind of risk because if traditionally certain data sets would not be datafied, now they might be because AI is supposed to transform the government in a way.
Great. So cybersecurity decisions are increasingly being made by algorithms now. Uh, who gets flagged, who gets blocked, what gets classified as a threat, who is who is actually accountable when those systems get it wrong. We are seeing it quite frequently now.
True. And the problem would be that, first of all, it's not a perfect classification. There are biases, there are hallucinations, there are data errors. Um, so, it, of course, AI helps us to classify all of them, and we are able to say more or less who is responsible for what. But even today, the automated classification method is far from being perfect. We need still human revision. And it's a constant debate, and this is a debate that goes way beyond AI. I remember, from my early days in darknet investigations, whenever we tried to develop automation methodologies, it would have been rare for me not to review the outputs. Especially because when you're dealing, with important clients, you cannot have this kind of mistakes. Think of what happened recently with Deloitte and this
Yes.
fascinating report in Australia. It was, of course, sad for Deloitte, but for the first time, you were like, okay, you used AI, you had that hallucination to report, now you pay a fine. It's a kind of a new Cambridge Analytica in a way in terms of the impact. Um, Automated classification of data and cyber threats and being able to tell exactly who is doing what. It's not perfectly done by the machines. We still need very strong revision of humans because it's a question of um, more, I feel, creative judgment as well. We need some kind of interpretation. Outputs alone are not enough. They might get better over time. So, and the question is how much we care about the results. So if it's a smaller company who want to get a kind of an estimation of potential hackers, then It's okay for you to rely mainly on the automated outputs, perhaps. But it's not perfect. And even when sometimes a human revising it, it still has certain flaws. So I think that we also need to be very wary and prudent about how much we trust. I would say AI classifications today on cyber threats, on the accountability behind the technologies are not perfect. Us reviewing them makes it better, but it's a very tricky domain. I mean, sometimes you cannot really know what is the next vector, what are your true weaknesses. So we need to be on the guard in this domain and always have additional experts, additional inputs coming, not just rely on one source of input to be able to take informed decisions on how protected we are and what is the upcoming cyber attack.
In that case, some level of due diligence in the case you brought out right now, some level of due diligence by the human component involved at the origin only would have resolved that issue. That means the entire hierarchy failed here to find out that this report has got some component of hallucinations. At least the references could have been checked. That means, are we completely relying on the AI leaving our cognitive ability and just giving the inputs and just feeding? You have to, I always tell people, sometimes you have to use AI as your best assistant, not as your boss. you know Even whatever the intelligence they've got, you're still a human being and you have got the cognitive ability. Utilize that. If there are few references when a model is referring to that is the part of the report, at least go and visit those references, and that will help you out to find out whether there is a hallucination, or is that really a reference.
I think that I completely agree. The thing is, also because we are human, we tend to be a bit lazy. We cannot really know what the AI is doing wrong. We see an output, it looks great. How on earth would we know that it has hallucination? It means that we now need to review the output and then it's extra work. Sometimes people want to say, okay, actually, this is doing my work. I'm good. I trust it. That's fine for me. In reality, there are risks. Again, it's a question of probability. In some cases, the AI output would be enough. Some cases, especially in the Deloitte case, it cost them $400,000, which is a very costly mistake.
And image.
True, reputation.
Reputation, very important. So, see, we are lazy, but aren't we hired to do that job? Doesn't that mean that AI is doing your job at a faster pace? Now you have to be your own boss and check, like your boss would have been checking your work. Check the AI's work, at least come up to that level. Be very. Does that mean that we have to be more and more professionally sound in the age of AI? And we have to be the jack of all trades and king of at least one now to excel in the age of AI, especially in cybersecurity?
Phil,
That is what I actually feel.
yeah, I think that we as humans still did not learn how can we excel properly when we have automation around us. We need to design our own KPIs. We need to understand that if up until now writing an assignment by ourselves in X amount of minutes would have shown that we are very good. Today, AI can do this in seconds. What would be the next excelling parameters? We need to learn. Uh, for us now, I feel that the KPI would be writing a thorough, very strong piece using AI, getting it to do different level of visuals and translations, and actually being able to perform as if we were 50 people in the same room. That I think would be a new KPI. So I think that we still need to see what the industry is requiring from us. It's very relative. So how is a class ranked? Before, when it was just like pen and paper, we knew who would be the dean's list. We would know that someone would get 100 because he wrote the best answer in X time on their own with no one else to help them but reading a book. Today, no one needs to read the book. I have ChatGPT, I can do everything. But then the competition changes. All of a sudden, all of us are in the same place, except those who do not have access to internet. That's a different problem. But assuming everyone has accessibility, now we need to see what is the new creative output that we could get. It will get me to score better. That's something that we haven't answered yet. Who is the new exciting student? Who is the next best performer? How can we be better bosses of the machine? And these are a lot of very interesting questions that I feel it just takes some time for us to understand how we are answering them. I don't feel that anyone has the answer of how we want academia to look like, how we want cyber attacks to look like. There's so many options, but it's also a balance because we also want to make sure that we're creating good things with it. And good things can also be subjective. My good won't necessarily be your good if we're competitors.
Yes.
I want to win and earn more than you, and you want exactly the same for me. We are, again, we can be again friends and we want both of us to succeed in the same time. But it's still relative. So I feel still need to learn and play with it to see, okay, I want to be the boss of my machine. But what actually is it that I'm trying to achieve with it?
Great. You sit on the Scientific Council of the Israel Association for Ethics in AI and advise on responsible AI globally. Is your view uh, in your भाई दोबारा से हाँ, I never liked uh, you sit on the Scientific Council of the Israel Association for Ethics in AI and advise on responsible AI globally. In your view, is the cybersecurity industry taking AI ethics seriously, or is it an afterthought bolted on after the product ships?
Cybersecurity was never a very ethical discipline. It's a creative discipline. It's a phenomenal one, but it's not for the ethical folks. Because in the end, it's an arms race between the attacker and the victim.
Yes.
AI is bringing a different nuance to it. I can defend better from cyber attacks, but I can also attack better. So I think that cybersecurity is just bringing slightly more depth into the discussions on data ethics. But cybersecurity is not about morality. It's about human lives. AI is a tool, but it can be used both for attacks, which are not ethical necessarily, but also for defense, that is usually conceived to be more ethical in a way. So that's my perspective. It's still used for both the attack and the defense at the same time.
Surveillance tools built for cybersecurity, like spyware, monitoring systems, often end up being used against journalists, activists, citizens. Where is the ethics line and who has the authority to draw it?
Complicated question, but a fascinating one. First of all, ethics is subjective and relative. I'm one of those who believe that ethics is relative. My ethics will be different than your ethics.
Yes.
Surveillance is usually associated with governments and national security. But think about it more traditionally. Every big tech company is also surveying us. My smartphone knows everything about me in every single moment. ChatGPT as well. Um, Surveillance is not just kept for the bigger Aadhaar or biometrics projects. It's everywhere. And sometimes surveillance can be justified, especially for national security. Where do we draw the line? First of all, users' agency and understanding of where the data is going to. Sometimes we cannot really prohibit someone from surveilling us. Sometimes we want it. We want YouTube to give us the best recommendations. It's kind of surveillance. The fact that the algorithms knows what I want to watch in every single second. The recommendations I get are the byproduct of the fact they've been monitoring my watching preferences. Um, so I feel that the way to understand it, I think, especially in the non-governmental space, we need to have the agency and autonomy to know where my data is used. And also the most important things, ethics is about the capability to opt out. If I want not to be monitored and I know where my data is, then I have the agency to do so. That's where ethics is coming into the picture.
Great. Governments want access to data for national security. Citizens want privacy. Corporations want to monetize data. These three interests are fundamentally in conflict. Is there a version of cybersecurity governance that genuinely balances all three, or is that just a fantasy?
I think, first of all, there are clashes, but think of it. Um, Governments are also sometimes, again, they are able to monetize based on certain models. Um, The corporates and big tech companies, sometimes they also behave a bit like the governments in the sense that, they are the owners of data and they need to govern it. It's almost like, again, nation of data. So it's the rules are also blurry a bit. The way to govern it, I feel, is first of all, each entity needs to understand what the permissions are. Usually, again, the governments and the big tech, they have more power because they have more assets. The problem comes to the user. The user is left alone. The user is the one who needs to have enough agency to know where the data is taken. There are laws imposed of them top down. They want to use platforms of the big tech and they don't really know how it's being used. I feel that the way to balance everything is by enabling the user more agency and understanding of what's taken from them. I think that's the way to continue. But it's a balance that will keep on happening. The government will try to regulate the big tech from doing whatever they want. They will try perhaps also regulate the users. Users want to be independent in the pace. And yes, the big tech company, they want to earn money. But data is also the new oil and it's a public asset. So the question of how much they can act freely is also at question. The balance will come when each entity understands what they can do and what they cannot do in the space. Governments usually are the ones setting the rules. Big tech companies as well. Users, they are a different entity because, again, they're smaller, they don't have enough power, but they have perhaps more options or more capabilities to do because they don't have any commitment necessarily as a company or a government.
The EU AI Act, India's DPDPA, and various national cybersecurity frameworks are all being written simultaneously, but not necessarily in coordination. Are we building a coherent global safety net or a patchwork that bad actors will learn to navigate?
I think that it's a good thing that countries are starting to create their own data legislation. It's part of data sovereignty. Countries need to be able to protect their own assets in the space. The EU AI Act came first. Usually, Europe is the one coming first with a lot of the AI regulations. DPTP, again, it's an older variation connected to cybersecurity as well. It's not just about AI, not at all, actually. It has some components of it. It's good that countries are also trying to develop their data regulations in this space. Um, is it really creating a safety net? I'm not sure. Also, I'm not sure that we want that to happen. I do believe that sovereign countries need to protect their interests first. Multilateralism, the ability of countries to collaborate in the space, it's a question of their agency. Currently, we are seeing AI blocks, but regulations, I don't think they should be mandatory if they are part of different countries. I do think that each country should have its own agency to know how they're using their data stack in a way that is good for them. Cybersecurity in India has very different needs than what it has in Europe. The considerations here is different. I don't want to see DPDP in the same way that I would like to see GDPR. There are some similarities, but there are some differences because of the size of the population, the linguistic needs, the way the economy is structured. And that's why I do feel that, again, enabling data sovereignty for regulation would be key. Will it be a net? It can be, but I also think that countries need to make sure that their interests are protected. It should not be just nations following Europe in the regulatory frameworks, because also Europe is good in certain parts. Regulations should look different in this space. So it can be a safety net. But if you want to have something that is, again, connected all the countries, that it should still be advisory guidelines, coalitions, things that still enable countries to have their own judgment in the space.
If you had to pick one group, governments, corporations, or everyday citizens, who bears the most responsibility for fixing the cybersecurity crisis we are in? Who would it be and why?
I want to say the users, because in the end, these are the biggest creators of data.
Mhm.
They are the ones who are, again, kind of like free creatures in this space. They are not creating the regulation. They don't really need to monetize from data. I do believe that this space relies on bottom up processes. the way that we're creating data, designing it, creating new startups, being able to solve certain solutions. The big tech companies, of course, are driving the space. They are creating new inventions. They are supposed to be the one fixing a lot of the problems, but they are limited to a certain profitable agenda. Governments as well, geopolitics, regulations, protecting citizens, a lot of considerations in place. I feel that when we're thinking on who is supposed to be bringing some solution to these wicked problems, the citizens who understand the situation, who have perhaps slightly more independence and autonomy to think, okay, this is the problem. Let's think of the next startup that will be able to solve it. I feel that the way going forward will be pioneering startups will be able to think more concretely on how AI is beneficial in this space, how cybersecurity attacks can be better monitored, how can we protect minorities, different populations. These are not things necessarily governments would be able to solve right away. Big tech companies are mostly driven by profits. It's a mix of everyone, but I want to believe that these solutions would come bottom up rather than top down.
Is there a moment in your career, something you saw or worked on that genuinely changed how you think about digital safety and who deserves to be protected?
Um, there were many moments. I feel that, again, growing up in this space, I got to see a lot of scamming attacks of older generations. Even like from a personal side, where I know that like my grandma, unfortunately, also, I mean, the again certain company that they were trying to push her online to purchase things. So I think that for me, seeing the intensity of scamming and attacks versus older generations and population, it's something that really impacted me. If I came, I would say, out of curiosity to tech, seeing how much hackers are trying to manipulate people just based on things that they cannot control of, based on their naivety. It's something that I found to be very alarming. So no, I put myself as a motto or, kind of a vision for life to be able to use technologies for better, to protect people, to make sure that people are aware of the good things. And if there are bad things, they're able to mitigate them. But I guess it's for me, generally social engineering against older population. It's been something that I guess alarmed me quite a bit over the years and definitely shaped the way that I think about this discipline.
Okay, Maya, last one. If the internet as we know had one fundamental design flaw that made all of this inevitable, what would you say it is?
I hope that it would be somewhere similar to the way that cryptocurrencies are working, that all the data is open source. You can access everything within the click of a button. There are certain safeguards and certain, I guess, locks and keys to enter the right spaces. But I hope that we'll be able to move from the surface web, that again, we are accessing only part of it, into a larger data economy where darkness is also part of the table. I think that this kind of segregation that we're seeing, in which we need to have so many different data accesses and trying to bypass certain laws to be able to anonymize ourselves to access certain forms. I think that's not what data is all about. I believe in free speech and free data. I think that we should have access to everything. We just need to see how to moderate it properly. So I think that the current structure is a bit limiting. And I hope that we'll have a better open data structure where everyone who wants to know something will have the access to it, regardless of power dynamics, of data accessibility, or any other socio-cultural factor that might impact it.
Amazing. Thank you. Maya Sherman, was brilliant. AI ethics, farmers policy. We basically covered everything except how to get AI to make a better chai. On a serious note, your work with the Embassy of Israel in India and the Global Partnership on AI is a masterclass in making technology actually work for people. Thank you for joining us, and next time we will test you on Indian streets for the Indian food. Thank you.
Looking forward to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maya.